Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal interesting facts of the week from June 23rd to 27th. First, at General Hospital, the week of June 23rd to 27th is shaping up to be a turbulent stretch of revelations, confrontations, and emotional explosions that could permanently alter the landscape of several key relationships. At the heart of the chaos is Nina, whose fragile bond with her daughter Willow is about to be tested in a way she never anticipated. Though Nina has made great efforts to earn Willow's forgiveness and rebuild trust, her world is set to crumble once she hears news of Willow's sudden and shocking engagement to Drew. The very idea that Willow would pledge herself to a man Nina once secretly had a heated encounter with is enough to send her spiraling, and what begins as a painful surprise may quickly evolve into something far more dangerous, a decision that could cost Nina her daughter forever. For Nina, the emotional whiplash is too intense to ignore. She has struggled to remain on the sidelines, watching Drew worm his way into her daughter's life under the guise of support and friendship, only to now seize the opportunity to lock Willow into a marriage that feels more like a trap than a celebration of love. While Nina is torn between preserving the delicate peace she's established with Willow and stopping what she sees as a manipulative power play, the truth about her own past with Drew weighs heavily on her conscience. In a rare moment of brutal honesty with herself, Nina wonders if revealing that she and Drew once shared a passionate night would be enough to halt the wedding, or if it would only solidify her image as a destroyer in her daughter's eyes. Meanwhile, Drew is moving fast, perhaps too fast. There are whispers among those close to him that his proposal to Willow isn't entirely driven by love. Instead, it reeks of strategy, control, and a desperate need to maintain his grip on the Quartermaine legacy through proximity to Willow and her children. As his influence over Willow deepens, so too does his urgency to formalize their bond before she has time to second-guess it. This urgency raises alarms for some observers, including Nina and even Michael, who may soon begin to sense that Drew's intentions are far from pure. The possibility that Drew might be leveraging Willow's emotional vulnerability, especially after her recent estrangement from Michael, adds a dark undertone to the upcoming nuptials. Amid this emotional turmoil, a storm is brewing in the shadows as Emma quietly crafts a plan of her own. Though still young, Emma has proven herself to be as cunning and observant as her parents. Sensing that something is deeply wrong with the power dynamics unfolding around her, Emma begins setting a subtle trap, one that could ultimately expose Drew's lies, Nina's regrets, and even Willow's suppressed doubts. Emma's involvement remains hidden from view, but her quiet movements suggest she may be the wild card no one sees coming. Her plan is not just about protecting those she loves, but about dismantling the house of cards Drew has built before it consumes everyone in its path. As the wedding draws closer, the air in Port Charles becomes dense with tension and suspicion. Nina's internal conflict becomes unbearable, and despite her desire to shield Willow from further hurt, she starts to believe that silence is more dangerous than truth. Every time she sees Drew and Willow together, her guilt tightens its grip. The possibility of watching her daughter walk down the aisle toward a man who once touched her with deceit and desperation is intolerable. As the day nears, Nina quietly prepares herself for the nuclear option, telling the truth, regardless of the consequences, even if it means setting fire to the fragile peace she's fought so hard to preserve. But Nina isn't the only one holding a potential time bomb. Tracy, long an opponent of Drew's rise within the family, may choose this moment to strike. If she determines that Drew has crossed too many lines or has manipulated his way into power he doesn't deserve, Tracy might use her considerable influence, and secrets she's collected along the way, to sabotage the event in spectacular fashion. Whether she directly confronts Nina, exposes Drew in front of the entire congregation, or orchestrates a quiet leak that derails everything, Tracy's potential interference adds yet another volatile element to a wedding already teetering on the edge of implosion. Even if the wedding somehow survives Nina's anguish and Tracy's thirst for revenge, fate rarely allows for smooth celebrations in Port Charles. The town's history is littered with ceremonies gone horribly wrong, and all signs suggest that Willow and Drew's big day may follow suit. With so many truths buried, lies snowballing, and secret agendas swirling beneath the surface, the wedding stands less as a moment of joy and more as a ticking time bomb. Whether it's Emma's trap snapping shut, Nina's confession shattering hearts, or Tracy's machinations unraveling carefully crafted facades, the day promises drama that will leave lasting scars. By the week's end, the residents of Port Charles will no longer be able to pretend that all is well. Willow may find herself questioning the very foundation of her future, Nina may lose the last hope she had of true redemption, and Drew may be exposed not as the stable partner he pretended to be, but as a man desperate to control everything around him, even love. And lurking just beneath the surface is Emma, whose quiet intelligence and unshakable sense of justice could make her the unexpected force that topples everything. In a town built on secrets, it will be the truths they fear most that finally set them free, or destroy them. Second, Curtis has always prided himself on being a man of strategy and intuition, but as the days unfold, his focus has narrowed into a singular mission, protecting Portia from the gathering storm surrounding Drew. Despite Portia's insistence that she can handle herself, Curtis knows the danger Drew represents. He sees the way Drew has manipulated public sympathy, twisted narratives to paint himself as a hero, and subtly inserted himself into circles of influence. Curtis, now watching from the shadows, is waiting for the precise moment when Drew inevitably slips. Every move Drew makes is monitored, every lie catalogued. Curtis isn't acting out of vengeance, this is about shielding the woman he once shared a life with from being dragged deeper into a man's spiraling ambition and moral decay. And more importantly, it's about ensuring that Drew doesn't become a greater threat to others in Port Charles. Michael, despite his past conflicts with Curtis, has come to a sobering realization of his own: Curtis might be gambling too heavily. He warned that this cat-and-mouse game with Drew could backfire, especially if Curtis's quest for justice becomes too personal. Yet even as Michael voices his concerns, he watches Drew with increasing unease. Drew is no longer the cautious, reserved man they once knew. He's become bold, erratic, and overconfident, exactly the kind of person likely to make a catastrophic mistake. Michael's instincts tell him that Drew is running out of room to maneuver. Whether it's a legal misstep, a betrayal of trust, or an emotional explosion that brings everything down, Michael believes it's only a matter of time. And he's ready to act when it does. Either to contain the fallout or ensure that justice finds its mark. Meanwhile, far removed from the courtroom games and political tensions, Vaughn is preparing for an entirely different kind of infiltration. Under Jocelyn's direction, Vaughn is stepping into a role that requires more subtlety than brute force, an embedded operative within the animal rights group where Emma has recently found purpose. Jocelyn knows that Emma's heart is drawn to compassion, to causes she deems just, and it's that very vulnerability that makes her susceptible to manipulation. Vaughn, with his clean-cut charm and carefully crafted persona, presents himself as a fellow believer, someone whose passion for justice mirrors Emma's. But behind the gentle smiles and shared mission statements is a more calculated intent, to earn Emma's trust and mislead her when the time is right. As Vaughn integrates himself into Emma's circle, he plays the part perfectly. He attends meetings, memorizes facts about endangered species, and participates in outreach events, all while quietly gathering information on Emma's movements and mindset. He praises her dedication, asks for her insights, and paints himself as a kindred soul who is slowly becoming enchanted by her fire and conviction. Emma, meanwhile, begins to lower her guard. She's always been wary of sudden friendships, but Vaughn's consistency and humility seem genuine. She starts confiding in him, nothing major at first, just small things. Yet each bit of trust she gives him becomes another thread he uses to weave the net that will eventually entangle her. What Vaughn and Jocelyn understand all too well is that Emma is dangerously close to discovering something that could unravel everything Dalton has worked for. She's intelligent, relentless, and above all, morally anchored. If left unchecked, she could become the very person who exposes the entire operation. That's why Vaughn's role is so crucial. He's not just a distraction, he's a safeguard. His objective is to lead her just far enough from the truth to neutralize her instincts without arousing suspicion. And if she begins to pull on the wrong thread, Vaughn is prepared to do whatever it takes to keep her from seeing what lies beneath. Back in the adult sphere, Curtis's pursuit of Drew takes a darker turn. He uncovers communications between Drew and an unnamed financial entity that suggest money is being funneled through shell companies, something far more serious than the public could ever imagine. Curtis knows he needs more than suspicion to take this to Portia or the authorities. He begins compiling evidence, working with quiet allies who still believe in law and justice, even in a town like Port Charles. But the deeper he digs, the more he realizes that Drew's reach has grown far beyond what he initially expected. Drew isn't just playing politics or manipulating a broken family, he's building something, a hidden empire, and Portia is caught in its outer orbit. Jocelyn, on her end, remains confident in her plan. She sees Vaughn's charm working, watches Emma lean into their conversations, and feels a sense of control she hasn't had in weeks. She's not proud of deceiving someone who used to be a friend, but she believes the ends justify the means. To her, Emma is a risk, brilliant, idealistic, and emotionally entangled in everything Dalton once stood for. Vaughn is her firewall, her last line of defense, and she won't hesitate to escalate things if Emma begins asking the wrong questions. What she doesn't account for, however, is that Emma may already be suspicious. Emma may be giving Vaughn her trust not because she believes in him, but because she wants to see what he does with it. And as all these threads tighten, a reckoning approaches. Curtis stands at the edge of a confrontation he knows could destroy lives but also save them. Michael waits for a slip he fears might come at too high a cost. Vaughn dances a dangerous line between manipulator and target. Jocelyn pulls the strings with quiet confidence. And Emma, perhaps the most underestimated of them all, is watching, listening, and preparing. In a city built on secrets, trust is a currency more valuable than gold, and more easily betrayed. Third, as the week of June 23 through 27 descends upon Port Charles, the web of secrets and subterfuge begins to constrict around the key players involved in the investigation into Professor Henry Hank Dalton. At the center of this tightening noose is Jason, who has once again been drawn into the shadows at Anna's behest. His agreement to investigate Dalton signals a major turning point, not only in his alliance with Anna but in the potential unraveling of the tightly wound conspiracy surrounding Dalton's covert activities. Jason doesn't take on missions lightly, and his instinct tells him that Dalton is more than just a disgraced academic with a mysterious past. He's a man cloaked in too many layers of deception, and each one hides a danger deeper than the last. As Jason quietly begins his investigation, moving through back channels and relying on contacts who owe him favors, he starts to uncover fragments of Dalton's former life that suggest involvement with experimental defense contracts, biochemical research, and ties to shadowy international operatives. Meanwhile, Jocelyn and Vaughn find themselves balancing on an increasingly delicate tightrope. Their fabricated romance, originally devised as a means to obscure their deeper agenda, must now be performed convincingly not just in front of Dalton's allies, but also before the very people who know them best. Carly, always hyper-attuned to shifts in her daughter's behavior, begins to sense that something is off. Vaughn's sudden emergence as a romantic interest raises eyebrows, particularly given the rushed intimacy and public displays of affection that seem too choreographed to be genuine. Carly isn't the only one noticing the change. Trina, Michael, and even Dex start to question whether Jocelyn has gotten in too deep, if her commitment to the undercover mission is beginning to erode the boundaries between reality and the roles she and Vaughn have assumed. The situation is further complicated by a truth neither Vaughn nor Jocelyn is ready to confront, the possibility that their act may be evolving into something real. What began as strategic flirtation, subtle glances, and carefully timed touches has slowly transformed into authentic connection. Vaughn, who once regarded Jocelyn purely as a mission partner, now finds himself drawn to her passion, her resilience, and her moral clarity. In turn, Jocelyn is beginning to see Vaughn as more than a tool or a facade. She sees the cracks in his armor, the pain he rarely speaks of, and the moments of quiet vulnerability he never intended to reveal. The more time they spend together, the harder it becomes to discern where the act ends and where emotion begins, and that confusion could spell disaster for everything they've been working toward. As Jason dives deeper into Dalton's past, he discovers that Dalton once vanished from public view for nearly 2 years, a period unaccounted for in any academic or military record. A hidden identity, offshore accounts, and encrypted communications with a tech lab in Europe begin to point toward a much broader conspiracy. Jason realizes that Dalton is no ordinary target, he's embedded in something far-reaching, and whatever his endgame is, it may already be in motion. Anna pushes for more intel, urging Jason to stay ahead of the fallout. She suspects that Dalton's work may tie into a larger network threatening global stability, and time is no longer a luxury they can afford. Every step Jason takes puts him at greater risk, but pulling back is no longer an option, not when lives could be at stake. Simultaneously, the false relationship between Vaughn and Jocelyn becomes a minefield of emotional landmines. The pressure to maintain the illusion leads them into increasingly intimate situations, each one drawing them closer in ways neither intended. Late-night strategy sessions blur into moments of silence laced with tension. Accidental touches linger a bit too long. Shared laughter turns into something wistful. Both tell themselves it's part of the job, but neither can deny the magnetic pull that's beginning to define their partnership. And with every heartbeat they lose control of, the mission becomes increasingly fragile. Their feelings, once an obstacle they thought they could suppress, now threaten to expose the very secret they're trying to protect. Outside their bubble, others are beginning to piece things together. Carly's instincts are sharpening, and she's not the kind of woman to sit on a suspicion for long. Her inquiries into Vaughn's background uncover some inconsistencies, and while nothing concrete emerges at first, her maternal instinct won't be silenced. She quietly begins watching Vaughn from a distance, cross-referencing his social presence, double-checking his stories, and compiling a mental list of things that don't quite add up. Carly's growing concern, combined with Jason's mounting investigation into Dalton, creates a volatile mix that could result in the entire operation blowing wide open if one misstep is made. As the week progresses, Port Charles begins to feel the pressure building under the surface. Jason's discoveries grow darker, Vaughn and Jocelyn's alliance becomes more entangled, and the circle of people aware of, or at least suspicious of, what's really happening continues to expand. Trina, ever observant and protective of Jocelyn, begins pressing for answers, especially as Jocelyn becomes more withdrawn and emotionally conflicted. Carly's determination to uncover the truth gains momentum, while Jason's mission starts to converge with Vaughn's objectives in a way no one expected. The pieces on the board are shifting fast, and each character must decide whether to protect the people they love or the truth they swore to uphold. By the end of the week, the stage is set for multiple revelations. Jason may find the final piece that exposes Dalton's true purpose, Carly might corner Jocelyn into a confession she's not ready to make, and Vaughn could be forced to admit that his feelings are no longer a tactic, but a threat to the mission. What began as a simple plan, pretend, investigate, extract, has evolved into something messier, riskier, and far more human. In Port Charles, secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible time, and this coming storm may sweep away more than just lies. It may expose hearts, destroy trust, and force impossible choices on those who thought they were in control.